All right, this distinction called the eye of charity, which is, at least put in that language, is a Christian notion. And I think it has so many implications about seeing, right, about the self, right, about the world. And it's precisely the thing that's really intriguing to me, is this kind of way that it seems to put how you see has this extraordinary way that it ends up constituting you and the world in this profound way. And so just the practice, like thinking of it in terms of a practice of developing the eye of charity, right? It just seems deeply rich.
Circling.
My sense is that circling can definitely give you a sense of that, right? It's all about really facing each other and perceiving and seeing each other, right? And that having it be a very like deliberate, concentrated practice, right? Of doing that, right? Attending, not a wanting attention. One of the experiences that people have, over and over and over again, is this immense sense of seeing the good in someone, right? And like to the point where it's not even just the good in that person, but this sense of catching sight of the good itself in that way. I think this is fascinating about circling, right? And why I think that it's not, it's not psychology, it's not therapy. The experience of seeing when somebody perceives that good in someone else, right? When you see that, all you want to do is make room for it. Kind of like in Heidegger's term, like the clearing, right? And there's an inherent sense of humility in that, right? Because it's so clear that you're not going to be able to make enough room for it. It's just too big, right? That's part of the experience. So there's all those components, I think, that go on in circling. And that's one of the reasons why when you started talking about this, that really, I think it's catching me in those ways, right?
And then suddenly we enter into the Christian element, the Christian imagination, the Christian virtues. And it's almost as if the Logos itself draws us towards these realms. It's all about letting the truth of being sway in the midst of us, of when we gather together as groups.
Yeah.
And what you describe about circling is, okay, you can just see a person as he or she is in his or her truth.
Yep.
What is it about charity? It has to do with this embracing of when something happens which the Christian tradition would name something like evil, or when we deviate from our original telos, from that which we are supposed to be, and we kind of by sin or by evil or just by contingency, we deviate from that.
Yeah.
And the eye of charity is that eye that is capable of seeing and bringing forth the ontological goodness, despite its being covered over by all the messiness and the contingency of our life. It's drowning out the despair and the wickedness as soon as you are in a kind of, when your being is in touch with that inexhaustible fountain, the wellspring of goodness, then you're capable of seeing the good, even when it's not visible at all. It's like you can still perceive the good, even in the most broken instances. And
totally,
it is a very deep answer to a very deep problem, actually, if we really think about that.
And this ecstasy of universal charity one will come to see the true mystery of God dwelling in all things.
And I hear there also when Heidegger talked about, you know, the shepherd of being, all of that kind of stuff, that we as human beings, so Dasein is care, right? So that our task is in some sense, and this is very deep ontological like constituent of our being in the world is taking care and bringing things into what they should be, into their truth, into their substance.
Yeah.
And a good example for that, by the way, is wine. That's why Heidegger talks in the Thing essay, he talks about wine. Why? Because only when you have grapes, but grapes without the human being are just grapes. But in order to kind of perfect them, to make them into this very rich thing called wine, that in order for that, the human being, the labor of the human being is necessary. So is it with child raising, right? The child cannot grow by itself. The human being is called to take part in this journey. So we are always, this is like what we just have to do as human beings. It's just always, we are really an integral part. By self-emptying, we can help other things come into their fullness. And that's really a deep ontological task that we have as human beings, that we are in this interval, so to say, between heaven and earth, or nothingness and fullness.
When you see the depth of their being, what you're actually seeing is this being that that yearns for God, right? Like in its guts and in its very constitution, right? Like so to really see someone in some sense is to see something like that, right? It is the opportunity to midwife in some sense, right? And we can actually, I think, become attracted. That can become something deeply attractive to us, right? And I think you see that too with people, right? Like people, they go and they contribute to charities and they donate their time and they are charitable, and there is a sense of an exhilaration about this, right? And I would imagine some of the exhilaration has to do with, right, this sense of midwifing the good, right? There's like a possibility or an opportunity that the schisms, that you see the schism, you see simultaneously the opportunity or the possibility, and that you can actually start to find those kinds of things in themselves in some very deep way beautiful.